Practice number 1 at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center is in the books. Ohio State training camp is underway. And Berm, as snap judgments begin, if there was one key metric of success for the Buckeyes, they did not pass.
Yeah, we talked about it on the beat on Thursday morning. Like, what makes day one a success? And the first thing we said is get out without an injury. We are waiting word for the extent of it, but Edric Houston went down in practice, was on the field. I was not on that end of the field when it happened. I was on the other side. We were indoors because of some storms. I didn't see it happen. I didn't even know he was on the field until after we got into the team room.
Yeah.
You said 2 or 3 minutes on the turf and then no pressure on the right leg coming off the field. It's like one of those things that you're like, of all the guys you can afford to lose, that's probably very, very low on the list of like who you want out. But it's day one.
Yep.
We don't know the severity of it. Try not to overreact. It is July 31st, but that's not great.
Yeah, there's a long way to go, and we're going to get into that and a lot more here on Snap Judgments on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV, 10 TV Plus. This is the Austin and Berm Show, by the way. I'm Austin Ward. He's Jeremy Birmingham. They were in a sort of 11-on-11 period, and the split squad, there was some on the left and some to the right of me. So it was 11-on-11, and Edric Houston is a defensive tackle. It was in the midst. I can't tell you for sure if it was a non-contact, if it was a roll-up. I don't know. He was in a huge mass of bodies, but you were waiting to see, was that 96 that's on the ground? And you had Ryan Day was right there with it. The training staff was right there with it. Ohio State wanted to continue moving on drills, so they moved up the yardage a little bit, but it took, a couple minutes before Edric Houston got up. A couple trainers carried him to the locker room immediately after he got up. He could not put any weight on his right leg. Now, as you said, this is day one. There is a full month to go before Ohio State plays against Texas. I think it was 2 years ago on this very day, on this very field, that Tyleik Williams slipped, had an ankle injury, and I thought, oh my gosh, well, that's the person that you can't afford to lose. Defensive tackle is such a critical position. We talked about the depth of that team 2 years ago, and we've talked all offseason about if there is enough capable depth for these Buckeyes at defensive tackle. And I think from that regard, and I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, if one of the wide receivers goes down, there's 7 on this roster that can play. If that happened at corner or safety, Buckeyes have some guys that they trust and they can roll right through. And maybe they will get to that point with a Will Smith or with Tywone Malone. We'll see as camp goes on, but I think there's a possibility that you could make a case that the single most important player, the one that Ohio State could not afford to see on the ground today, was Edric Houston.
Yeah, but also I want to
reel me back in.
Yeah, like let's understand that some things are done out of precaution. Okay, we assume he got rolled up on in a pile based on the way the play was set up, right? So don't want to overreact because it could be just an ankle sprain. It could be whatever. So let's not assume that the season's over and Edric Houston is unavailable for Texas. But I think the unfortunate part on a day like today is that because the way that they're split up the squads, we don't really know truly who the next guy up is.
Yeah, for this particular drill, it was Eric Mensah.
Right, but on the other side of the field were Will Smith and Tywone Malone and Jarquez Carter. So you don't really know. Maxwell Roy not out there today as he recovers from something from the offseason. So the defensive tackle depth, which is already one of the larger concerns on the roster, becomes hard to discern when it's a split squad. So we could probably talk for an entire 20 minutes on this episode of Snap Judgments about Edric Houston and the potential impact, if that is a severe or a long-term injury. But I feel like it would be reckless to speculate beyond what we saw and what we know and what, I guess, we've seen Ryan Day a lot this offseason. He has generally been in a pretty upbeat and positive mood.
Yeah.
I know that America loves it when we try to
read the vibes
or deep dive into Ryan Day's psychological state. When he came into his press conference after practice, this is 5 minutes after practice is over, he certainly did not have the first day jollies that you would have expected. He made it a point in his press conference to talk about how these Buckeyes, are very inexperienced and need a lot of reps. And so, why is the starter out there? Because he's a second-year player. He needs to be getting as many reps as he can. But he also made a point to talk about how the players need to learn how to practice like NFL players. especially when you're not wearing pads and taking care of each other. And that seemed intentional. So I'm just trying to figure out what he's trying to say without saying it. And so I think it seems like a situation where maybe there was a roll up, and those can feel very scary in the moment, and then they're fine a week later in some cases. Now, some cases it's out for the year. You don't know. But there were a lot of other things to talk about today. And when, it was certainly not 3/4 of the way through practice, I wasn't like, oh, this is the thing we have to lead snap judgments with. But now here we are. That's the way it works.
Yeah. Certainly expected that we'd be talking more about the way Ohio State was lining up with the offensive line, which was about what you'd expect even in the split squad. Or we can't avoid having conversations about the quarterbacks when you have, the first 3 practices all being open, even if they're not in pads. Your eye is always going to be drawn to Lincoln Kienholz, Julian Sayin, and Tavian St. Clair for what they're doing, given the importance of that position. So is there somewhere else that you want to go before we talk about the quarterbacks?
Let's get it out of the way. Let me ask you this question. How much weight should we assign to the fact that as they did the split squads inside, so they pulled them inside, and then basically for the remaining last 25, 30 minutes of practice, it was split squads and shell type drills, 7-on-7 type stuff. It was 11-on-11 type stuff, but wasn't a lot of obviously contact at all, or wasn't supposed to be.
Jeez.
How much weight do we assign to the fact that on Lincoln Kienholz's side, he had the presumed starting left tackle, center, and right tackle, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Innes, Max Clare, James Peoples, and Julian Sayin was on the other side without all of those obvious starters? Or is that just me reaching for something to create drama?
I would say in my younger days, I'm taking that and reading the tea leaves.
Because the starting guards were on the other side with Julian Sayin, but everyone
Carnell
else...
Tate was over there with Julian Sayin. So I would say I've seen Ryan Day do this enough that I believe probably on Friday for practice number 2, those roles will be reversed. So I'm not going to overreact to that part of it. There may be other things that I saw on Thursday that I'll overreact to, but not that part. Because I think Ryan Day is wise to that situation.
Yeah. I've already seen on social media on Thursday morning a video clip taken by another member of the beat who posted a video of Julian Sayin taking snaps from Carson Hinsman and said, Julian Sayin is taking first-team snaps with...
Yeah, but the first person who took snaps from Carson Hinsman was Lincoln Kienholz. Right,
but that part was left out of the tweet. And so I think that these are the things that are unfortunately going to cause a lot of these narratives to be formed. And again...
Because that's what I was saying. I think Ryan Day is wise to that and is trying to cut it off. Because you used to be able to look and say, well, who's the battery? Who's the starting quarterback and the starting center working together? Even in that drill, Ryan Day rotated them, or Billy Festival rotated them, or Brian Hartline rotated, or all 3. Like, we can't let anybody read anything into that. When they were throwing on air, when they were having 7-on-7 periods, they were both out there at the same time.
Eli Brickhamler got as many reps today as Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz and Tavian St. Clair did. So, you can't make anything out of what we saw out of the quarterback. So, the rhetorical question I'm asking of how much weight do we put into it, the answer is 0.
From who was playing with who, I'd say 0. Absolutely. If you want to evaluate some of the throws and decisions, which again, it's day 1, so...
But again, it's based on the offensive line you have and how the defense... I was watching Kenyatta Jackson and CJ Hicks in the indoor against the 4th-string walk-on tackles when Julian Sayin is trying to... That did not go well.
Now, in that same period of 11-on-11 work, Julian Sayin delivered his very best throw of the day, over the shoulder, streaking Carnell Tate down the left sideline. I think it had been a little bit rough in terms of the actual accuracy and consistency, and it could be because of what you're talking about. A, it's day 1. B, you got Kenyatta Jackson and CJ Hicks getting in your face, and it's going to be difficult. There were a lot of check down opportunities for Julian Sayin, and the converse thing was, I think that the single best throw I saw all day was Julian Sayin. The more consistent throws were Lincoln Kienholz. That man can absolutely rip a slant, and it's a lot easier when it's Jeremiah Smith, but he was also doing it, between the linebackers and between coverage to Mylan Graham. So imagine that. I was looking at number 5 running a route out there and my eyes were drawn to it. But so and again, it doesn't mean anything because it's day 1. I think it does reinforce in my mind that maybe the highest ceiling is Julian saying, but that the floor currently could still be Lincoln Kienholz. But that may well change tomorrow. It's not. They did not determine who the starting quarterback was today, and both of them had things that they're going to have to do better.
Yeah, and it's clear, not that it needs to be reiterated because we tried to say this in the spring as much as possible. This is a two-man quarterback room right now, and then you have Tavian St. Clair, who is in developmental year and an opportunity to learn and grow, and Eli Brickhandler is a body. Like, that's what he's here for. That's what he was brought in 2 months ago to do. It's to just even out the rooms. This is a two-man competition, and I know a lot of people don't think it's a competition at all. I guess we'll see. I don't personally believe that, but we'll see how it goes moving forward. What coach was the maddest today? Which coach did you see that was the most pissed off?
Brian Hartline. For me. I mean, I was primarily watching the offense, and there were the younger wide receivers, let's say, especially when they moved inside and they were trying to recapture some of the urgencies. They started out here outdoors. Great setup for the fans for the most part, except when they went and did 7-on-7 on the far field. I'm not sure how much the fans could see of that, but
they had to move that down for the VIPs.
But for activities and things like, it's still very cool. And there's tickets for Friday and Saturday still available if you want to come out and
it's not supposed to rain tomorrow
and catch that. But they started outside. They got a little 60% of the way through, and then they had to finish in the indoor. And it was like, oh, okay, well, you stopped and you're standing around. Brian Hartline was livid. There were a little bit of like personnel substitution packages that weren't operated to his perfection, to his preference. And he was very loud and vocal about that. That was the closest that I was to any of the coaches throughout, the way that the fields were set up. So maybe I'm biased on that regard. But I think Brian Hartline, he knows how he's going to be evaluated this year. He was not going to waste day one, and the standard is the standard in that room for sure. He got on a couple of those younger guys, including one who I may or may not be on the bandwagon for.
Which one's that?
I don't know.
Okay, cool. For me, it was Tyler Bowen. The only use of words that we can't say on this show that I heard today was expressed by the offensive line coaches, which is not abnormal. Let's be clear.
That's their love language.
That is sort of a standard operating procedure for that group. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but that backup offensive line, backup tackles, or presumptive backup tackles, which was Philip Daniels on the right side and Ian Moore on the left side, had a mighty big struggle with Kenyatta Jackson and CJ Hicks, who just absolutely embarrassed them multiple times in a row to the point where Tyler Bowen was pretty grossed out by it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, and I'm just because it's day one and we're going to overreact to things. I saw like on the right side of the line there with Tiger Shabola and Philip Daniels, like one rep was really good, and you're like, wow, that's gonna be a dangerous duo if they're out there together. And then the next rep was like, oh boy, that's a bad duo. Let's hope that doesn't happen because. And then to Philip Daniels' credit, and this is what I've loved about him since he got to Ohio State. As practice was over, after Ryan Day's press conference is over, as we're walking out here to the fans' outdoor studio for this Snap Judgments, the only players working still on the indoor were Philip Daniels and CJ Hicks and
Ethan Onyanwa.
So
you're stealing my thunder, man. That's my shtick on Snap Judgments.
But like that's CJ Hicks is really bought. We talked about him all offseason. I don't know if he's going to be that guy once the lights are on and the games have started, but he is committed to trying to be the best defensive end he can be because he's always working.
I mean, we'll see what happens when the split squad stuff is over. I mean, he was traveling with Kenyatta Jackson. Like, that's not nothing. They don't generally split up because you saw the tackles together. Yeah. You saw the guards together. You saw the defensive ends together, in my opinion, and you saw the defensive tackles. When Edric Houston went down, he was playing next to Caden McDonald. So I think sometimes you can read into that part with the way that they package the rest of those units together, but not necessarily for the quarterbacks because that's going to continue to rotate, and it will into day 2, where we will be back out here as well as all of the live broadcasts for the fan, starting with Morning Juice and T-Bone and Tyvis. Bishop and Friends will be out here, and we will be as well. We'll have the Beat on Friday morning. Got something that we're pretty excited about to cook up for you guys, so stick around for all of that on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV, and 10 TV Plus, and anywhere that you download audio podcasts. Snap judgments, not exactly the way we thought it was going to go at day one, but day two can only get better for the Buckeyes from here on out. He's Berm. I am Austin. These are Snappy Jays. We'll see you later.